This chapter will serve as our introduction to metabolism. A living cell is a chemical factory in which thousands of reactions occur, including the synthesis of proteins, hydrolysis of carbohydrates, the production of lipids, and so on. Some organisms, such as the glowing dinoflagellates, a type of algae shown in the photograph, have the amazing ability to convert energy stored in certain molecules to light, a process called bioluminescence. All these metabolic activities are performed by the cell in a precisely coordinated and controlled manner. So as we move through the information in this chapter, we will consider how the cell, being its own chemical factory, transforms energy and matter through its metabolism. Be mindful that it is an important chapter, as it provides the foundation on which the next chapters, 2 chapters covering cell respiration and photosynthesis, are based. The term metabolism refers to the sum total of all chemical reactions in an organism. You can think of a cell's metabolism as a complex roadmap with thousands of reactions or metabolic pathways intersecting with one another. A metabolic pathway begins with a specific molecule, which is altered in a series of steps, resulting in an end product. Each step of the pathway is catalyzed by a specific enzyme. For example, in the picture, the starting molecule A is converted to B with the help of enzyme 1. In the second reaction, enzyme 2 aids in the conversion of B to C. And as you guessed it, enzyme 3 helps to convert C to the final product, D. As shown, metabolic pathways are carried out in a very precise and coordinated manner. Metabolism as a whole manages the material and energy resources of the cell. With that being said, there are 2 types of metabolic pathways, catabolic and anabolic. Let's consider catabolic pathways first. Catabolic pathways release energy by breaking down complex molecules to simpler substances. It may be helpful to know that the prefix cata means down, as in the breaking down of materials. A major catabolic pathway is cellular respiration, in which glucose is broken down in the presence of oxygen to carbon dioxide and water, enabling the energy stored in glucose to become available to do cellular work. Another example of a catabolic pathway is hydrolysis. Remember the water splitting reaction we reviewed back in biological molecules? For example, starch can be broken down or hydrolyzed to release glucose monomers. In both examples, note how the starting reactant is always more complex than the products. Anabolic pathways are the second type of metabolic pathway and can be thought of as the opposite of catabolic pathways. Anabolic pathways consume or absorb energy to build complex molecules from simpler ones. It may be helpful to know that the prefix ana means up, as in the building up of molecules. A major anabolic pathway is photosynthesis, in which carbon dioxide and water, in the presence of light energy, are used to synthesize glucose. Another example of an anabolic pathway is dehydration reaction. For example, individual amino acids are linked together via a series of dehydration reactions to synthesize the protein polymer. In both examples, note how the starting reactant or reactants are always simpler than the product. Okay, so now we know that catabolic pathways release energy and anabolic pathways absorb energy. How is this helpful in understanding cellular metabolism? Well, remember, a cell has thousands of pathways, and these pathways intersect one another via a process called energy coupling. Energy coupling refers to the transfer of energy from catabolism to anabolism, meaning that energy released from a catabolic pathway can then be used to drive an energy requiring anabolic pathway. In a sense, the catabolic drives the anabolic. We will consider the concept of energy coupling in more detail later in the chapter. Let's do a quick review of the different forms of energy. Energy is the capacity to do work. But what is work? Work is performed as matter is moved against opposing forces, such as gravity or friction. Another way to think of work is the ability to rearrange matter. So, for example, I can push on the wall in my office for several hours and be really tired at the end of the day. However, I will have not accomplished any work because the wall never moved. In cellular metabolism, work is performed as reactants are converted to products. Think about it. In photosynthesis, the atoms of carbon dioxide and water are rearranged to form glucose. Now, there are two main types of energy that you are very likely familiar with: kinetic energy and potential energy. Kinetic energy is often referred to as the energy of motion. For example, the kinetic energy of muscle contraction enables you to run to your car after class. Or as in the picture, the water moving through the dam represents kinetic energy. The transfer of thermal energy, the kinetic energy associated with the random movement of atoms from one object to another, is called heat. Potential energy is often called stored energy, energy that when given the opportunity can do work. Specifically, it refers to the energy an object has because of its position. For example, the water behind the dam represents potential energy, as does the chemical energy stored in the bonds of molecules. For example, we take advantage of the energy stored in the bonds of fat and sugar molecules when we eat a candy bar. The illustration uses a group of people swimming to give examples of transformations between potential and kinetic energy. The male standing high on the diving board has more potential energy than he has while in the water. The man diving into the water is converting his potential energy to kinetic energy, which is then transferred to the water as he enters it, resulting in splashing, noise, and increased movement of water molecules. Also, a small amount of energy is lost as heat due to friction. Now, once he is in the water, he has less potential energy than he did standing on the platform. The female climbing up the ladder is releasing chemical energy from the food she ate earlier and using some of it to perform the work of climbing. The kinetic energy of muscle movement is being transformed into potential energy due to her increasing height above the water. Okay, so through the diver's different actions and locations, it is easy to see how energy is transformed from one form to another. But what was the original source of the food molecules that provided the chemical energy to support their activities? Well, the chemical energy was itself derived from light energy absorbed by plants during photosynthesis. So think of organisms as energy transformers.